just after me and another English guy decided, like, oh, let's go for a swim, like immediately after eating.
Oh, I know
And
where this is
the,
going.
the Italians were like, no, what's wrong with you?
Oh my, they were like calling in
You need to
ambulance.
wait
Like,
at least 2 or 3 hours. Like,
yeah.
oh my God, like, did you get this as well? So I was
All
like,
the time, all
what
the
you
time.
on about?
Even now, because so I was in Italy a couple of weeks ago. So my wife is Italian. We go obviously all summer, spend time with their family, with her family, and yeah, it's like have something to eat, and then it will be like no one in the sea, and then I'll be like, but I'm hot. I've done this before, and everyone will be like, don't do it. You've got kids. Like, don't leave them without a father. I've done this before. I'm going in. And then I must admit, sometimes, like, because everyone's like looking at you, I start thinking, oh my God, am I actually going to die here?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on where you are in the world right now. I'm back in Brussels, and surprisingly sunny Brussels. For how long, I'm not sure, because the weather has been all over the place this week. But I'm hoping to be able to get out, go for a stroll, get my sunnies on, and listen to a podcast. But anyway, enough about me. Of course, we have another fantastic guest on this week, and he's there kind of nodding along, sitting back and ready to get started. So, Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Lewis. Thank you for that intro. It is always a bit awkward, that bit where the other person's talking. I just kind of nod and kind of think, oh, when's he going to mention me? But yeah, we've got past that now. So happy to hear it and happy to be here.
Onwards and upwards from here.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure most people watching or listening to this will already have seen you and know a little bit about you, but let's get straight into the introduction. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, you know what? So I've done so many of these podcasts over the years, like on someone's podcast, and obviously the first thing they do is ask you for that introduction. And I always think, why don't I prepare something? Because when it comes to it, you're always like, oh God, what am I going to say? You know, like you do something at work and it's like the thing of like stand up and introduce yourself. It's so I should really plan this. So I've done this. I just make the same mistake every single time. So you always feel like you have to start with your name, don't you? So my name's Martin.
Yep. Good start.
Yeah. I teach English as a foreign language. I've been doing that for a long time. I did the usual thing of, well, I moved abroad, and then you kind of think, right, I need to get a job. And then you end up teaching English. And so I lived in Italy for a long time. I went there with one suitcase in 2010, came back in 2022 with a lorry, a wife and a child. Since added another child to that.
Great success.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, so I have a podcast as well called Rock and Roll English. I've been in the online game quite a while now. I think I'm one of like the OGs now, like, original gangsters. I think it's only Luke's English podcast, maybe, who's been going long. So I've been doing it since 2017, which to me doesn't feel like that long ago, but from what I understand in the online space, it is quite a long time.
It sounds like you were ahead of the curve, and this is now, what, 7, 8 years ago? So congrats on the consistency.
Yeah, well, I was a bit more consistent as you kind of, have kids and stuff. The consistency does kind of like go down a bit. But yeah, so I've been doing the podcast for a while now. And is that enough of an intro?
That's plenty. I can ask you lots of follow-up questions. So,
okay, great.
First, you kind of fell into the same situation that I think a lot of us fall into in wanting to go abroad, thinking like, oh, I'm going to travel the world, but wait, I don't have any money. How can I do that? So then the backup plan is often, I know, I'll teach English.
Absolutely.
And I also did the same thing when I moved to Seville. It was like, well, I'll look for a job, but the easiest job to find is probably teaching English. So in your first weeks or months of teaching English, what was it like? Did you get any like imposter syndrome or anything?
So when I started, I since have done lots of different qualifications and properly studied. But when I started, I got a job in a school in Rome teaching the Callan method. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that. So
It rings a
basically,
bell, but I'm not sure exactly.
so it's a weird kind of method of like, so basically, I read a question and say, for example, do you like sausages? And then I have to basically elicit the answer from you. And I say, like, yes, I like. And you repeat, like, yes, I like sausages. So it's like this parrot method,
Uh-huh.
basically. The student
Yeah.
is a parrot, and you're. So I wouldn't even really call that properly teaching. However, when imposter syndrome, if anyone ever asked me like a grammar question or anything, my most embarrassing moment was, obviously I'm from Essex, and when I first moved abroad, I couldn't say the th sound properly because I had a very thick accent. I think it has kind of gone a bit more neutral in recent years. So instead of
Mhm.
the word mother, for example, with like a mother, I would say mother. And one of the words, because it was quite heavy on pronunciation, this thing was that word. And I was saying mother,
Mhm.
and this Italian person was saying mother. And I was going, yeah, mother. And then I remember going, mother. And then he went, mother funk. And as a joke. But yeah, so I was there and I walked out of that lesson thinking there's going to be a student now walking around saying my mother. And I was like, what am I doing? It was horrific.
But I mean,
Um,
all accents are equal in terms of being like valid. Of course, you can speak like a Scot, you can speak like a Welshman, you can speak like you're from Essex. And I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things about the United Kingdom, that whenever you teach students for a while, sometimes they'll pick up your accent and it's like,
yeah.
yes, come on.
Yeah, also true, but I don't know. I just that one particular thing. So for example, when you teach students, I'd imagine if you say the word bath, how would you teach them how to say that
Bath.
exactly?
I'm going to have a
Now,
bath.
yeah. So that for me, like that, I wouldn't think, oh my god, that sounds horrible, because that's just like you say, the way people from the north will say that word. But that mother, I don't know. That was a low point in my life.
I mean, I did have a similar experience in my first job because there were certain classes which were focused on identifying like minimal pairs and
Right.
similar sounds
Yep.
and all of the content that was pre-prepared, and we just had to like deliver it.
Yep.
And they'd always make us say, for example, sun, country, and all of these like
Yep.
sounds rather than the that we
Yep.
pronounce more in the north and in particular
Yep.
in Yorkshire.
Absolutely.
So it's like, oh, it's proper sunny, like
Yeah.
sunny. Whereas they would tell us to say it's really sunny with like
Right.
an
Okay.
I'm like,
Got ya.
no, this is wrong. But I kind of had to do it and change
Yeah.
my accent and neutralize it at the same time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I also have exactly a similar thing with minimal pairs, and it was free. Like I am as free as a bird, and three, the number three, and I could not distinguish them at all. And I was saying to everyone, "Okay, free and free," and they were like, that's just saying the same thing. And I was just like, oh God, how am I going to get out of this lesson alive? Um, yeah, some bad days at the start, but luckily, well, I hope to think that I have become a much better teacher since those days, because yeah, I had like no training there. It was just literally thrown in the lion's den,
Yeah.
and yeah, but like that was a long time ago now, luckily.
It was sink or swim, and you swam by the looks of it. And
I was sinking for
yeah.
a long time. Just about survived. I think I was unconscious for a while, but then got resuscitated when they picked me up on the beach.
Exactly, you made it. And then,
Yeah.
given that you mentioned that you started your podcast in 2017,
Mm-hmm.
I remember that I had already started listening to podcasts back then, but it never crossed my mind to make my own one until
Mm-hmm.
many, many years later. But does that mean you're a kind of tech savvy person, that these ideas come naturally, or even business savvy?
I would say definitely not to both of those questions. And even now, kind of like tech skills. Uh, well, when I see other people, like say my wife, who's terrible with technology, it does make me feel a bit better. But I wouldn't say I'm tech savvy at all. I keep things really, really simple. Um, and same as business, I just kind of make things up as I go along. But the reason I started a podcast, there was a few reasons. I think one of the main inspirations was Ricky Gervais. Now
Okay.
I think I might be wrong in saying this, but I think he made the first podcast. Like he invented podcasts in the UK. He was like the first, well, certainly the first name to
Hmm.
start a podcast, and it was basically him, some other people, Stephen Merchant and Cole Pilkington, just talking rubbish. And then I kind of thought, I think I could just talk rubbish as well. And then I noticed that Luke's English podcast existed, and he just talks a lot of rubbish. And I don't mean that that's not in a sort of like offensive way, just like has a chat and rambles, as I think he says.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I think I could do that. And I was actually trying to get some decent listening material for my students. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to make some of these. And I made the first kind of like 10 episodes of my podcast. I kind of just made for my students, and I just
Hmm.
saved them as audio files and used to send them by email to my
Yeah.
students. And then I thought, right, okay, I'll try and get a bit more serious here. And then it started.
Perfect. I mean, that actually does remind me that in, I don't know, 2018, 2019, I did send like audio files to students telling them it was a podcast, but it was never listed as a podcast.
Yeah.
And if only I'd have started back then. If only. But hey.
Yeah.
And given that you had this online presence, does that mean that you started teaching online classes before the pandemic and before all of the lockdown?
Yes. However, I was still working at a school in Italy. So it was kind of like a side project, but that it was kind of during the pandemic where I thought, well, okay, I'm going to do this full time now, I think. But yeah, I was still running online classes before that. I was quite familiar with Zoom and breakout rooms before the pandemic. Yeah.
Good times, good times.
Mm, yeah, indeed.
But anyway, let's talk about the name Rock and Roll English. Is that because you're into rock and roll?
Again, a question I get a lot when I do these things.
Sorry.
Now, yeah, again, few kind of things. Now, again, you would think that. You would think I'm
But
into rock and roll, and like Noel Gallagher got a like Union Jack guitar, but that is not the case. Really, I have a friend who is a dentist, and we were out one night and we were talking, and someone said, "Oh, aren't you a dentist?" And he said, "No, I'm a rock and roll dentist." And I thought that sounds so cool. And I was looking for a name of my podcast, and you often get like English with Rob, English with Lewis,
Martin Lewis.
and I thought I'd like maybe something a bit more. So I just thought, how about rock and roll English? And then basically went with that. So yeah. However, I like to say now that on the podcast we do talk about taboo subjects, so it's kind of the rock and roll spirit of like say what you want, do what you want, be what you want. That's why it's called rock and roll English. That I suppose would be a more like philosophical answer, but the reality is a friend said he's a rock and roll dentist, and I thought that sounded cool, so
It's like,
that's the
sick,
reason.
mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, cool. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Italy and about Sicily in particular, because before we started recording, we were, having a bit of a chat, getting to know each other, talking about things that we'll later go on to talk about in a bit more depth. But I mentioned in passing that I went to Palermo, where I did my Erasmus. Had a great time. It was amazing. Didn't really improve my Italian that much. Didn't really make that many Italian friends. But hey, it is what it is. But I was unaware that you actually lived in Palermo. I just knew that you used to live in Italy. So,
Yes.
um, why did you first move to Palermo, or did you first move to Palermo? What's
It's
the Sicily story?
Yeah, yeah. Again, I haven't really got any simple answers for you, have I? Because it's not really a simple answer. Again, so where to start with this one? So I was working in investment banking in London years and years ago, and then
Okay.
I thought this is not for me at all. And so I thought, you know what, I would like to go and live in Italy a bit because my grandparents were Italian, but I didn't, as a child, didn't speak any Italian. And I always thought, I'd like to learn some Italian. And I ended up getting a job in a hostel in Palermo.
Hmm.
And so I'd gone from working in an investment bank left on Friday to working in a hostel on the Monday. So it was
Your mum
it's a
and
bit of
dad must have been buzzing.
oh yeah, they were over the moon. So it was a bit of a career change. So I spent a little bit of time in Palermo, and then after a few months, I moved to Rome.
Hmm.
And then when I was in Rome, then after a while, I got a job for an Italian law company, um, and they had an office in Palermo, and said, "Would you like to live here?" And because I already knew the city, I thought, well, why not? Um, so I did that. Um, because I was like teaching English where I was doing things with the lawyers and like drafting emails and things like this. So then I moved back to Palermo for that. And then I got bored of that job, got another English teaching job. So I think I answered your question there, didn't I? Of why
Yeah.
Palermo? Yeah, I think that was the question, wasn't it? You start talking sometimes, don't you? And then you're just talking rubbish for so long. You kind of think, what was the question again?
No, no, no.
This is
I
what I
know what you
tell
mean
people.
exactly.
Yeah, for exams actually. But anyway, yeah. So that's why.
Perfect. I mean, a lot of the time, whenever I'm interviewing people, thinking of questions at the same time, I'm like, kind of like, okay, got to listen to pay attention, but I've also got to start thinking of my next question. So then I'm like, okay, what's
Balancing
going
act,
on?
isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. But with Palermo, I remember that the city is beautiful. And of course, you've got a huge like mountain just around it. I can't
Monte
remember the name.
Pellegrino. Monte
Monte
Pellegrino.
Pellegrino. Then
Yeah.
you've got the port. The beaches in the city centre don't really exist, but
No.
you've got Mondello,
Mondello, yeah.
which is just near the Palermo Football Club stadium.
Yeah.
And kind of.
Kind of, yeah. You have to go past that from the city. You kind of go, if you get the bus, you certainly go past the stadium, yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, I look back on that time like really fondly, that I had a really good time. Obviously, I think I moved there in February, and the first weekend we went to the beach and actually went for a swim. So I was like,
That
oh,
is, that is,
I could get used to this. Of course, it wasn't boiling, but it was like
mm,
20 degrees in February,
yeah.
quite humid as well. So I was like, wait, I've just come from England where it's absolutely freezing and dark at 3 o'clock. And I've arrived here in Italy eating pasta, pizza, gelato, and I've just gone for a swim. So, what's not to like,
Uh,
right?
Absolutely. That is the exact reason why I always ask myself what I'm doing back in the UK. I used to live in a house with a sea view. And like you said, I used to go, so I lived outside of the city. I used to go to the beach 12 months a year. Not every day, but every month there were some days like in January and February where, like you said, it's 20 degrees. You can go. Obviously, the water is cold, but you can. I was always the crazy English person, obviously. Like the Italians would be like, "Oh my, oh, like, mamma mia,"
Oh, oddio,
yeah,
mamma mia.
uh, things like this, and like I would go out with wet hair, and they would be like, "Oh my god, you're going to get a cold, you're going to die." I'd be like, "Don't worry about it. I'm English. I'm all right." But yeah, so the weather, especially the weather and the food, like two things you mentioned there, are things that I miss a lot.
So we'll get on to why you moved back to the UK soon, but that just reminded me that I remember we went to some kind of like barbecue gathering, and it must have been in May or June, and we had a lot to eat. And just after, me and another English guy decided, like, oh, let's go for a swim, like immediately after eating.
Oh, I know
And
where this is
the,
going.
the Italians were like, no, 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 what's wrong with you?
Oh, they were like calling an
You need to
ambulance.
wait
Like,
at
yeah,
least 2 or 3 hours. Like,
yeah, yeah.
oh my God. Like, did you get this as well? So I was
All
like,
the time, all the
what you
time.
on about?
Even now, because so I was in Italy a couple of weeks ago. Because my wife is Italian. We go obviously all summer, spend time with their family, with her family. And yeah, it was like have something to eat, and then it will be like no one in the sea. And then I'll be like, but I'm hot. I've done this before. And everyone will be like, don't do it. Don't do it. You've got kids. Like, don't leave them without a father. I'll be like, I've done this before. I'm going in. And then I must admit, sometimes, like, because everyone's like looking at you, I start thinking, oh my God, am I actually going to die here? But luckily I haven't died so far. So far, so good. Because that's the thing I say. It's not even like you'll get a stomach ache. It's you will die. It's like,
Wait,
so yeah, that's a really common thing.
I didn't get it at the time, and I'm
Mm.
just like, you can see I'm crying a little bit because I'm remembering that moment of like a group of Italians with their head in their hands, like, no, don't do it, don't go into the water. You've just had a steak. Come on,
Mm.
chill out.
Yeah, that is a really
Oh
common
dear.
thing.
But anyway, Palermo, what are the things that you liked the most about living in Palermo? Obviously the food, but what was it like and what were the highlights of this long experience, this big period of your life?
You know what? I say this to my wife regularly that I feel healthier and stronger in Italy, and I think it's because of the sun. Just generally, just in a better mood because of that. So again, like I used to go out, for example, from like May, or even before that, kind of like April to October. Often before work, I used to cycle to the beach, have a swim, come home,
Mhm.
have a shower, and then go to work. Now imagine that in comparison to waking up, it's grey, it's cold, and it's raining, and you go to work. Like there's just no comparison. And I also felt that I could sleep less in Italy. In the UK, I feel like I need to sleep more because I think it's something to do with the weather. Um, so I don't know. I just felt healthier. And another thing is, I feel as if I was outdoors much more. Whilst in the UK, like even in the summer, you say to your friends, "What do you want to do? Oh, let's go to a pub," and then you're in like a dark, dingy, smelly pub.
Yeah.
Um, whilst when I was in Italy, like you're always eating outside, drinking outside, and just generally outside. Um, so yeah, those are the things. And another thing, bit more practical thing here is the cost of life. Because in the UK, certainly near London, it's everything is so expensive. Whilst in Palermo, especially, like Italy is much cheaper. Everything is cheaper than in the UK.
Mhm.
However, the more south you go, the cheaper things are, and you can't really get more south than Sicily. So, like going out, I remember near work there was a place, and a nice place to sit outside, and I always used to get on a Friday when they used to do it, pasta with like salmon, and it was €3 for like a whole plate of pasta. Um, Now in the UK, that would probably be like 18
20
pounds.
quid. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, the cost of living, like obviously around London, it's more
Uh,
expensive than it is up north where I'm from. And the opposite happens, of course, in Italy, where if you go to Milan, it's
yeah,
going
of
to be
course. Yeah.
quite pricey. And maybe in Rome as well, if you go to these like touristy areas. But like you, when I was in Palermo, I'd often go to university and have a three-course meal for, I don't know whether it was €3 or €4, but I'd get there every day and have my starter, my main, and my dessert and pay
Mm.
them in like coins, which the
Yeah,
fact
yeah.
that I could pay them in coins was just like, what a bargain.
I
And then it
know.
was so filling. So you didn't really need to eat much else for the rest of the day or
Yeah,
before that. So it was like, I can eat for £4 a day per week.
I know.
That's what, like
Yeah,
20, 30 quid?
I know. And because of that, it's just I don't know. It's just like nice. Like in the UK, like now, if you want to go out and have something to eat, like well, so like I've got a wife, two children. It's like nearly £100. Um, so you kind of think, well, I can't do this all the time. Whilst when, so like I said, I was in Sicily recently, um, and you just feel like you can just go out, not every day, but certainly Friday and Saturday night, go out for something to eat. Like standard. Whilst if you do that every Friday and Saturday in the UK, then you're going to be spending a lot of money.
Great. So, all right. Why did you move back to the UK then?
Yeah. If I should go get my wife and she can tell you, because it was more her. But so she was of the opinion that it's better to raise children in the UK. We still often talk about this because not really sure. And the idea was kind of like, we'll go to the UK because otherwise we would live with the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we don't like it, we'll move back. I kind of get the feeling we don't like it, but we're just too lazy to move back because it's too much effort. So no, there are, like everywhere, there are pros and cons to everything. So there are definitely some pros of living in the UK and I think raising children in the UK. However, there are also pros and cons of exactly the same things in Italy. So yeah, it's a tough one, really.
We will see. I mean, I think it's nice and it makes it easier to raise them bilingually as well, because if they've spent time in both countries, then not all of the pressure and responsibility falls on the parents, because if they were still in Sicily, then I imagine they'd be speaking Italian the vast majority of the time, and you'd be like the point of call, the teacher for your children. So that's maybe a little bit less pressure in that regard.
Yeah, luckily the bilingual thing, I mean, being a parent, I've had obviously loads of problems, everything I find difficult. However, luckily the thing about language, which is something before I had children, I honestly was losing sleep about. I honestly couldn't sleep at night thinking about it. So I thought my daughter, is at the time we only had a daughter, I thought she's not going to speak English because I was mainly working. And I thought she's not going to see me as much and everyone's going to be talking Italian. She's not going to learn English. And I honestly couldn't sleep at night. But luckily they both speak English and Italian fine, which I'm very happy about because, obviously if they didn't speak Italian, they wouldn't be able to speak to my wife's family. If they didn't speak English, they wouldn't be able to talk to my family. That would be a nightmare. However, that has been zero problems. I could talk about all the other things which have been giving us problems, but luckily that is one which hasn't. And I know people in the UK, we know like other Italians, and they have had problems. So it's one of those things as like a parent, you think it almost makes you feel good when people have problems because you think, oh God, at least it's not me this time. Because we have problems with everything else. But sometimes you think, oh, thank God, at least it's not me. So yeah, the language thing, luckily, all good.
Okay, and is there a trick to that? Like, I've heard that usually, like, each parent speaks in their own mother tongue,
that's
and
what
that
we
way
do,
it's easier.
That's what we do. I don't think we've always stuck to that. One parent, one language. So my wife always speaks Italian. I always speak English, and that's worked for us. But I think other people have tried the same, which doesn't and maybe hasn't worked. But that's what we've done, and it's worked, and it flows nicely because if we're having dinner, for example, because my wife understands English, I understand Italian, so one of the children will say something to my wife in Italian, and I will respond to that in English. So it's not weird. Everyone always asks, well, how do you manage at dinner? Like you have to choose a language. We're like, no, it just flows naturally and nicely, which is good. It would be weird, like if my wife spoke a different language that I don't speak, that would, I suppose, make things more complicated because that moment of like when you're all talking, it would be like, what did you just say? But luckily that's not the case for us.
Oh, perfect. Now, moving on from family, let's talk about a topic that brings us together, and starting with Palermo Football Club.
Okay.
Because I remember when I was there, I went to the stadium 2 or 3 times because it was peanuts. It was so cheap.
Oh,
and
God, yeah.
I can't remember how much I paid, but it was nothing, and I wasn't working, and I didn't complain about the cost of living or anything. But back then, Palermo, I think they'd just been sanctioned, and they had gone down to Serie C or something like that. First, were you and are you a Palermo fan?
Because I was, as I mentioned in our pre-pod chat, so engulfed in English football, I never really got that much into Italian football. So when I lived in Rome, I went to like their Stadio Olimpico a few times to see like Roma Lazio, but not really. I've never really been like really into it. For example, like you kind of keep an eye out for them, but not really, to be honest. So I follow them on Instagram and I talk to friends that are like Palermo fans, but I wouldn't say that I'm really like up to date with what's going on. I know they're in Serie B now,
Mhm.
um, but no, I'm not, because I spend all of my time listening to podcasts about English football and watching English football. So I don't really have that extra time to dedicate to Italian football. I must admit, I do find Italian football quite boring as well. They're like the football itself, and the thing which I think in England, I think is what makes football so good in England is like the atmosphere in the stadiums. And like, for example, your team Leeds, when they were down, I think, in like, did they go to League One as well?
Yeah, we're in League One
But
for 2 years. Yeah.
still getting like high attendances.
Hmm.
Whilst like if you go to like which would have been Serie C in Italy, like the third division, essentially, you got like a man and his dog watching that, and that it makes you haven't got that electric atmosphere often. Like for example, away fans, like it's a common thing in the UK, like even like in even my local team, Chelmsford City, when I go and watch them, there are away fans that come,
Hmm.
more away fans than go to like a Serie A match in Italy sometimes.
Yeah.
And that like rivalry and that electric atmosphere is just something I think which makes English football fantastic. Even like if you're watching it on TV as well, you can feel the atmosphere. And in fact, Italians often say like that's what it feels like English fans are almost like part of the game that you're watching.
Hmm.
Whilst I mean, obviously when we watch a big game in Italy, that might happen, but for the majority of matches, that's not the case. Um, so yeah, I'm not a massive fan of Italian football, but yeah, I've always kept an eye on it, obviously.
I mean, it is true that, like in Italy, for example, and in some teams in Spain, like there aren't as many die-hard fans, or
Mm.
maybe there are a lot of fans which will support, I don't know, the bigger club instead of the local club. Wink, wink. Uh, and then you look at the UK and Germany in particular, where you feel that like
Yeah,
football is for the fans, and that's why
yeah,
they've got this model of, I don't know what it's called, but basically fan groups own
yeah,
half
yeah,
of each club. So then they're not allowed to become, I don't know, mega rich states, or they're not
yeah,
allowed
yeah,
to go against what the fans want. And there is power from the fans to keep football being a popular sport where
yeah,
everybody is allowed to go and they can afford to go. So something's not right there. It needs
yeah.
to be fixed.
My theory, I don't know if this is true on this, is that because I mean, let's face it, football, well, it certainly was originally supposed to be a working class sport. Okay, I always say it's for like working class scum like me. um, like those, I mean, that's probably a bit harsh to describe it like that, but it is kind of sort of like working class people, working
Yeah.
class people's sport. And in, for example, let's use Palermo as an example. Okay, so they do have those diehard fans that do go to every match. They in like the quarterfinals, they say like the curve, let's say. However, I've never spoken to these people, but the idea of them going to watch when they're in Serie A, like going to watch like Juve away, like so they'd have to pay for flights, for a hotel, like that just would not, they would
Mhm.
not be able to do that. Whilst in the UK, obviously, like, well, we've got like a minimum wage and stuff like that, and so people going to football, the people that maybe do go home and away. So when I used to do that, for example, I was in my early 20s. I had like lots of disposable income because I didn't have a wife, didn't have children, things like this, and you're earning half decent money, so you can just spend it on football. Whilst if I compare that to, and maybe an Italian in the same situation, like early 20s, probably be a student um, or like unemployed. So it's just, it, it's not that easy to do that. Um, which, by the way, is my theory of why England fans are always like the worst behaved, because those people that maybe are not so well educated, use all their money to go abroad and just get drunk and smash places up, and really do our country proud.
It's not good. Whenever there is a World Cup or Euros or anything, it's always really nice to see Irish fans or Scottish fans and Welsh fans, and they're all really, really proud, and of course form part of the United Kingdom, not Republic of Ireland, but it's like they're good vibes, friendly, everybody gets along with them. And then it is so different when you compare it to the typical English fans, where everybody knows what kind of people I'm speaking about, and they're always looking for a fight. Obviously, they're really, really drunk. No problem with that. You can be drunk and you can be very happy and friendly as well. But it's just, you want to be patriotic and proud when it comes to football, but then this is the dark side of the English national team.
Absolutely. It's horrible when that happens. I've been to I remember going to European aways with Manchester United and being with some people, you get talking to people and then they start doing things and you're like, okay, I'm just going to try and just slowly get away from you without you noticing, because I am scared you might also hit me. But yeah, that's the not nice thing about football. Even, I don't know if you feel the same, when you tell people you like football, sometimes I always feel a bit embarrassed because it has got that kind of oh, you're just some kind of
some kind of hooligan
scum. Yeah, especially I'm English, I like football. I specifically remember once when I was in Palermo, an English girl actually had a boyfriend, and you could see he was really sort of well dressed, and I just came Adidas top on and
working
jeans
class
and
scum.
And so I think she'd gone to the toilet, and that I wasn't the third wheel. It wasn't them two plus me. There was a group of people, but I was quite good friends with this girl, and I thought I'll try and make the effort to make friends with her new fella, let's say. And so I was talking, and the conversation was really dry. And then I thought, right, I'm going to have to just throw this one out there, which I don't like to do, but I just said, do you like football? Because if they say yes to that question, it's like, oh, thank God. And then you think, right, we can just talk all night now. So I said, do you like football? And he said, no, I hate football. He said, I just find it lots of people just I can't remember the specific words, but sort of said some sort of bad things. And then he said, in fact, I've never watched a full football match in my life. What about you? And I was like,
me neither.
I mean, there were some weekends where I might watch 6 games in a weekend, but I was like, just the odd one or two, I think.
I mean, I bet you were just like, oh no, what are we going to speak about for the rest of the night?
Because those times when you say that, do you like football? Because you might have that thing of it's a bit awkward, you don't know what to say to someone, but it's just do you like football? And they say yes, and they are really into football. It's just bang. And then, so they might even be from a different country, and then you can use your championship manager knowledge. It's oh yeah, I did, I remember talking to someone from Romania once. She said, I'm from Cluj. I was like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, Cluj. Yeah, I played them in the Champions League once. Yeah.
No, it is 100% something that does bring people together. I can think here in Brussels that usually if I'm out socializing and speaking to people that I don't know that well, or maybe we don't have that much in common, but if they like football and I like football as well, and usually we hang out at the weekend, so then you're like, oh, have you seen the result? What's going on? How are they doing in the table? And so on.
There are no words to describe the relief when someone says that. I remember another example, again, quite similar. Was when I was living in Rome, and an ex-girlfriend, I was out with her and her friend, and her boyfriend was from Montenegro. And that weekend it was England-Montenegro, and I thought, brilliant. I was like, England-Montenegro this weekend? They just went, I hate football, I'm not interested. And I was like, oh, God, this weekend we're playing your country. What are the odds? I thought we could have a in-depth chat about players to watch out for. It's horrible.
What a nightmare. Well,
Yeah,
we've only got a few more minutes, but I'd like to touch on your favorite club, which you did mention is Manchester United. That when you were growing up, it was the glory days, the class of
not
92
off.
as well.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously, I'm a Leeds fan, so I've been through a pretty tough time over the last 20 years as well.
right.
So we
Yeah.
can we can be in that together at least. But what about the future of Manchester United? How do you feel about it? Are you optimistic in any way that you might be able
No,
to bring back the glory days?
it's very difficult to certainly the glory days, like because like you said, when I if you make a comparison with Leeds, they've had a really tough time because they were like pushing like when I was like in school and stuff like Champions League semi-finals, like near the top of the league.
Yeah.
So yeah, if Manchester United situation is not great, but if I compare it to Leeds, that must have been a real heartache. But yeah, it's difficult. It just looks like the same mistakes are being made over and over again. Got a new manager in, he's got a new system, he gets his players in, spends loads of money. Doesn't look like it's working. Things have got to start changing pretty quickly. Otherwise, he won't be able to survive. And then a new manager is going to come in and he's got like specialist players, like he's going to change the formation and he's going to have to get rid of these like wing backs and like extra like number 10s. So it looks like we're just going round and round in circles, really. And especially at the top of the club when they're like making decisions like you see every week of like people now are not allowed food. They like they have to bring their own food, and like they were like making people redundant that were on like 25 grand a year, and then they said, oh, because we're going to be out of money, and then they go and spend like 250 million or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like
It doesn't sit well with people.
no, it doesn't sit well. But it's also like if those are the people that are making like the decisions. I mean, these decisions that I just mentioned are like quite low level things, but if they're making bigger decisions, it's like, do you trust them to make the right decisions? Probably not. So, I mean, football goes in cycles, doesn't it? And yeah, you've got to suffer as well. It's part of the beauty of football, though, isn't it? The suffering.
And it,
Otherwise,
it
you would
means that you're going to savor and rejoice and enjoy these moments more when you do have success. I know for sure if
absolutely,
Leeds ever do become a really successful club again in the future, because you've been down in the doldrums and you've been
absolutely.
in League One and the Championship and through financial troubles as well, then if we do ever win a trophy or qualify for European competitions, people will absolutely love it. Like even last season when we won the league, the Championship, and got promoted, there was a huge parade and hundreds of thousands of people lining the streets, all wearing white and yellow. And it's like you can feel the passion,
Yeah,
which
this
is
is the beauty
kind
of
of
football. Yeah.
it's pushed to an extreme after you've suffered a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, this is the absolute beauty of football. A few years ago, West Ham won a European trophy for the first time. Like you can just feel it, like, and seeing with because West Ham in that final scored in like the almost the 90th minute, and you can just see from the reaction of the fans, like, and like I said, it's almost that which is so great because during COVID, for example, football was terrible, wasn't it? Um, so that is what makes football so brilliant. Like the fans and that in English football is something that I love. One of the things I love the most, like for example, like fan chants in the UK. Like, oh my god, they are so good. I could spend all day just watching fan chants on Instagram. um, but
Right.
yeah,
No, it's
absolutely
good.
brilliant.
Now, on that note, we have run out of time. I've got to go, but you will be seeing us together again in the future because in a week or so, I'm going to be a guest, I believe, on Rock and Roll English. So I'm looking forward
Absolutely.
to that. And yeah, if you don't like football, I apologize for the last 15 minutes, but
I have tried to keep
if
it general and talk about like the instead of like going into details about like what Bielsa was like and what you think of him. So I have tried to keep it like general. So I hope that we managed to do that.
I reckon there'll be some people who will have absolutely loved these last 15 minutes. And if you are one of these people, let us know in the comments. And maybe in the future, we can do a football special or
Oh yeah.
do a Premier
What?
League preview at the beginning of every season or something like that.
Oh,
Oh, the possibilities are endless.
could talk about this all day. World Cup next year as well. I like to do a pre-World Cup pod, so we could definitely do that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, Martin, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to chatting again soon. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And lots of love to everybody.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Bye bye.